She sat quietly in the corner, barely noticed by the others. While the room buzzed with loud voices and louder egos, no one paid much attention to the woman in the plain navy coat. To them, she was just another face, someone who didn't belong, in a room full of power, money, and ambition. But what they didn't realize was, she had been watching, listening, waiting. And when the time came, she wouldn't just walk away unnoticed. She would walk away with everything. This is the story of a woman the world overlooked. Not once, not twice, but her entire life. At work, at family gatherings, even in her own relationships, she was seen as someone who stayed in the background. Quiet, kind, helpful, but never taken seriously. And certainly never seen as someone who could outsmart the people who always thought they were in control. But this time, the rules were about to change. The setting? A sprawling estate, the kind that holds more secrets than rooms. A family torn by old rivalries and greed, all circling the fortune of a dying patriarch. His will, rumored to be worth millions, became the center of a storm. Everyone wanted a piece. Everyone had a plan. Everyone thought they were the smartest in the room, except no one was watching her. They didn't see how she moved quietly through the chaos. They didn't notice how she connected the dots others missed. To them, she wasn't a threat. She was invisible, and that was exactly what she needed. By the time the dust settled and the truth came out, they were left stunned, scrambling, and furious, because the woman they dismissed, ignored, and underestimated had just claimed the entire fortune. But how did she pull it off? What did she know that no one else did? And why was she even in the room in the first place? The answers aren't what you'd expect, and trust me, the real story is just getting started. Her name was Clara. Most of the family barely remembered how she was connected. Some thought she was a distant cousin. Others assumed she was just had stayed on needed. In truth, she was the late Mr. Whitmore's former assistant. For nearly 12 years, she had worked behind the scenes, managing his schedule, arranging his meetings, and handling the paperwork no one else wanted to touch. She was the quiet one who always showed up, always stayed late, and always remembered the smallest details that everyone else forgot. When Mr. Whitmore fell ill, Clara was the one who made sure his medications were right, that his bills were paid on time, and that his lawyers didn't miss a call. The rest of the family came and went, some out of guilt, most out of greed. They argued over money, questioned each other's intentions, and made subtle threats dressed up as concern. But Clara? She stayed out of the way. She listened, and she watched it all unfold. The will became the centerpiece of every conversation. Rumors floated around that it had been changed in the final months, and that someone unexpected might have been written in. Tensions grew. Every glance at Clara turned into a quiet suspicion, but no one asked her anything directly. They still saw her as the woman who fetched coffee and answered phones. What could she possibly know? But what they didn't realize was that Clara knew everything. Not just where the documents were, but what was behind them. She had seen how Mr. Whitmore's children tried to manipulate him. She had watched as fake promises were made, and fake tears were shed. And she had seen how much it hurt him. So, when he quietly asked her to help him make some changes no one else would see coming, Clara didn't hesitate. Still, no one suspected a thing. Not even when the lawyer arrived. Not when the sealed envelope was placed on the table. And especially not when Clara calmly took her seat at the very front of the room. As if she already knew what was inside. The room was silent when the lawyer broke the seal. Eyes darted across the table, hands clenched under polished wood, and behind every calm face was a storm of nerves. Clara didn't flinch. She simply folded her hands and waited. It wasn't arrogance. It was certainty, one that unnerved the others more than they'd admit. Across from her sat Alan, Mr. Whitmore's oldest son. He had flown in from the city in a designer suit, already expecting control of the estate. He had always been the loudest voice in the room, the kind of man who treated people like pieces on a board. To him, Clara was just part of the background. Next to him was Lydia, the youngest sibling, sharp, calculated, and cold as ice. She had once worked in finance before quitting after what she called a lucky exit. She saw herself as the only one who truly understood how to handle wealth. And then there was Mark, the middle brother, quiet but bitter. He had spent years nursing the belief that he'd been overlooked by his father and the rest of the family. To him, this inheritance wasn't just money, it was validation. But none of them noticed the thin tension building between the lines. Clara wasn't there for a fight. She had already played her part long ago. What was unfolding now was just the ripple of decisions made in silence. Outside the room, the staff whispered. Some had worked in the estate for decades. They had seen how Mr. Whitmore trusted Clara with things no one else touched. Some of them even suspected something had shifted, but they kept their thoughts to themselves. As the lawyer began reading, words like revised will, private arrangement, and executor by request filled the air. Each phrase hit like a quiet blow. Alan's jaw tightened. Lydia narrowed her eyes. Mark leaned forward slightly. No one looked at Clara, but they were all thinking the same thing. What did she do? What none of them realized was that this wasn't just about money. There were other secrets buried inside that will. Choices that would split loyalties, test blood ties, and reveal just how much trust Mr. Whitmore had placed in the one person no one ever saw coming. The lawyer paused as he flipped to the final page. The room had grown heavier, like all the air had been pulled out. No one spoke, but you could feel the tension pressing against the walls. Every second stretched longer than the last. Alan leaned back in his chair, arms crossed tight across his chest, while Lydia scribbled something in a small notebook she'd pulled from her bag. Mark kept staring at Clara, eyes narrowed, trying to read something, anything, from her still expression. Clara didn't move. Her gaze stayed fixed on the lawyer, calm and steady. Though her heart was thudding so loudly she was sure someone could hear it. She had played this moment over in her mind 100 times. But now that it was here, even she couldn't predict exactly what would follow. The lawyer cleared his throat. Per the final version of Mr. Whitmore's will, he said slowly, dated just 4 weeks before his passing, all financial assets, properties, and investments, including Whitmore Holdings, are to be transferred to one beneficiary. He looked up. The silence was unbearable. Clara Mayfield. The words hit like thunder. For a moment, no one moved. Then Alan slammed his hand down on the table, making the crystal glasses rattle. "This is a joke," he said sharply. "It has to be." Lydia stood, her mouth pressed in a tight line, while Mark stared at the floor like the ground had just shifted under his feet. Clara didn't say a word. She didn't have to. Every eye in the room was now on her, not with indifference, but with fury, confusion, and disbelief. "This doesn't make sense," Lydia snapped. "She's not even family." But that was the thing. Mr. Whitmore had known exactly what he was doing. Clara had been more than a name on his payroll. She had been there through everything, seen more than any of them ever would, and earned his trust in a way none of his children ever had. Still, questions buzzed like hornets. What had really happened in those last weeks? Had Clara influenced him? Was this legal? Could the will be challenged? And buried beneath all of that, the biggest question of all, what else was Clara hiding? The lawyer hadn't even closed the file when Lydia snatched it from his hands. She flipped through the pages, eyes scanning fast, searching for something, anything, that would give her an opening. "There's no way this stands," she muttered. "He must have been manipulated, or worse, he wasn't of sound mind." Ellen nodded, feeding off her anger. She must have forged something. Dad would never leave us with nothing. Never. But Clara remained still. She knew this storm was coming. What she didn't expect was what happened next. I want to see the video, Mark said quietly, his voice cutting through the noise. Everyone turned to him. What video? Alan asked, half laughing like it was ridiculous. But Clara froze for the first time. The lawyer cleared his throat. Mr. Whitmore recorded a message. He requested it be shown only if the will was contested. Mark leaned forward. Then show it. The tension snapped into something sharper. Clara felt her breath catch in her throat, because she had no idea what was in that recording. She hadn't been part of that moment. Mr. Whitmore had recorded it alone, locked in his study, after asking everyone to leave the house for the day. Even she had only learned about it after his passing. And now, it was about to become public. The lawyer inserted the flash drive into the laptop. The screen lit up. There he was. Arthur Whitmore. Thinner, pale, but alert. His voice was steady as he spoke. If you're watching this, I'm gone. And someone's trying to undo what I've put in place. He looked straight into the camera. So let me be clear. I changed my will not out of pressure, but out of truth. I've watched my children lie, cheat, and try to carve up my life's work before I was even cold. But there was one person who never once asked for anything. She protected me when others pretended to care. Clara is the only one I trust to carry this forward. Gasps filled the room. Clara looked down, her face unreadable. Then the twist came. But there's something else, something even Clara doesn't know, and it changes everything. The video froze. The lawyer looked stunned, and the room exploded in chaos. For a moment, no one moved. The video screen hung in silence, frozen on Mr. Whitmore's face, as if even the technology wasn't ready to let go of what came next. The lawyer tapped a few keys and the video stuttered, then resumed. Arthur Whitmore's voice returned, slower now, heavier. Clara, if you're listening, there's something I never told you, something I never told anyone. He took a long breath. You're not just someone I trusted. You're family. The room went dead quiet. Not a single breath. I made mistakes a long time ago, he continued. Your mother, Elaine, she worked for me. We had a past, a quiet one. And out of that came you. I stayed away because I thought it was better that way. I was wrong. I watched you grow up from a distance, and when you came to work for me, I saw what kind of person you became. And I knew you were the one who should inherit what I built. Not because you're my daughter, but because you're the only one who earned it. The screen faded to black. The silence that followed felt like it stretched for hours. Clara's world tilted. She'd come into that room knowing she had the legal right to the fortune, but she never